You can keep the good times.
Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be doing an album review. I know it has been quite a while since my last one, you know, it's one of these things like life just sort of gets in the way of these things. But anyway, I'm back today doing a review, and I'm going to be looking at this album here. It's by Prefab Sprout and it's called Protest Songs. So I'll just be doing the usual thing in this video, giving a bit of background information about the album because it has got quite an interesting backstory, this one. Then I'll be showing you my vinyl copy of it here, and then I'll be looking at each of the album songs in detail. So this album was recorded after the release of their second album called Steve McQueen. Like that album kind of cemented the band and songwriter Paddy McAloon as one of the best songwriters of the 80s, and I think he felt a lot of pressure to sort of follow up that album. So his plan was to rush record and release a follow-up album, like in like a way to sort of like not allow expectations to get too high, like for like the follow-up album, like to Steve McQueen, and to also kind of contrast the kind of lushness of that album that was produced by Thomas Dolby. Very great sounding record. So kind of they wanted to sort of do like a self-produced kind of follow-up, like sort of like to like contrast it. So consequently, it was recorded over 12 days in September of 1985 at Lynx Studios in Newcastle. So the album was actually like announced, like to some extent, like in like the promotion for like their 1985 tour. Like it was announced like for like a December release. However, it got shelved like at like the last minute by the record company. Like he wanted to push the Steve McQueen album further. I think one of the singles, "When Love Breaks Down," that could just become like a had like just become like a sizable hit, so they wanted to sort of like release more singles from that. Like they thought like it would confuse the market to have like a brand new album so soon after the last one. By the following year, bootlegs of the original album had sort of like made their way out, and sort of like hardcore collectors like could sort of hear it like for like the first time. Like so sort of like with this in mind, like the band decided to sort of like abandon like this album and work freshly on another one, which became Langley Park to Memphis. And then this one eventually got released in 1989, so some 4 years after it was originally intended, without any fanfare or promotion. There was no singles taken from it. However, despite this, it still managed to reach number 18 here in the charts. And the critical reception, it was met with widespread acclaim, with some even saying that it was the best album to date. So certainly didn't do them any harm releasing it. So anyway, I will just now show you my vinyl copy of it here. So this is a original pressing of it, original UK pressing as far as I believe. So you just got, that's Wendy Smith on the cover. She was their backing singer, and then that's just on the back. So there's no other credits. There's not even a list of the band members on here at all, who plays what or anything. It's very sparsely designed. You've just got the song titles there, and then a wee blurb there, just sort of explaining kind of roughly what I was saying about it being recorded in 1985 very quickly, just about the release of the album. And then on the other side, you've just got all the lyrics to the songs, and then the record is on the usual kitchenware records for Prefab Sprout. And just looks like that. So that's the vinyl record looked at. Okay, so I now go over each of the album songs. So I will score each track out of 10, and then use those scores to give us a overall percentage marking for the album.
It keeps the weary world awake.
So the record kicks off with a song called "The World Awake," which is a upbeat opener. I think it's a really great sounding song. This it's got kind of quirky production on it, sort of these sort of prominent backing vocals. Gives it a kind of slightly odd sort of flavour, but I really like it. And I mean, for an album which is supposed to be kind of stripped back and sort of kind of self-produced, there's still a lot going on with this, a lot of different sounds going on, different synth textures. Lyrically, it might be about kind of spontaneous events in someone's life. He sings that it chance being a fine thing brought us together, but we're not magnets, well, not forever. And yeah, I just think it's a really catchy song, very memorable, and a great opener. So yeah, The World Awake for me would get a 10 out of 10. Next track up here is called Life of Surprises, which is now a Prefab Sprout classic. However, it had a very sort of weird kind of release, this song. It was originally not part of the original version of this album, which was announced. Instead, it was recorded from the early days of the Langley Park to Memphis sessions, so kind of after they'd finished all these songs, and it was released as a B-side to the song Nightingales. However, they then put it on this album and then later released it as a single in its own right to promote a greatest hits album, and I think it's a fantastic song. I think it's really great that it was finally issued as a single, because it's such a great song. It begins really quietly, kind of, again, it sort of starts like a ballad, but then we're then thrown into this fantastic chorus. Again, some great lyrics on it about kind of not sort of thinking too much about life, and sort of kind of taking things as they come, sort of a life of surprises. So one of the good lines on it, I think, is never let your consciousness be harmful to yourself. Let no neurotic impulse turn inward on itself. So yeah, fantastic song, I think. And again, yeah, another 10 out of 10 for me. Next one up is called Horsechimes, which is a more sort of quieter ballad, this one, I would say. It's quite a nice sort of delicate song, I think. However, lyrically, I'm kind of in the dark about what this song is about. He's kind of at the start, he's sort of narrating it, sort of mentioning something about a character called Johnson and that, and then it does sort of then continue and that. But I do quite like the line, where he sings it, and don't I know it, and I'm ashamed, and I won't say it, that we're to blame, and I must change. So it's maybe about sort of wanting to kind of improve yourself as a person, sort of change aspects of your personality to become better. But again, really, it's all sort of cloaked in kind of metaphors and stuff. So it's a kind of, it's not a song which you immediately pick up. That's what he's sort of talking about. But I do like it though, and I like the different changes it goes through. Plus, you've got also some great bass playing here from Martin McAloon as well. So yeah, but for me, Horsechimes, a bit of a step down from the first two, but still overall a good song. So we get an 8 out of 10 there.
What could make a girl believe the wicked things?
Next track up is called Wicked Things, which I really love the musicianship on this song. You've got a lot of different kind of drum rhythms going on on it, and I think the drummer in the band, I forget what he's called, but he says that this is his favourite Prefab Sprout album, in the sense that it's got his best drumming on it, and I can certainly see that. Certainly his drumming gives it a very sort of jazzy, very sophisticated sort of flavour to it. But I think it goes sort of kind of deeper, this song, I think, that it sort of appears on the surface. But I do like the opening line, your mother's got bags of good advice, the don'ts exceed the do's, but she's not you. I mean, it's perhaps about sort of passing down advice and sort of warnings from an older generation to a younger generation. Perhaps that's just my sort of interpretation of it. But I do like this song, and think it's really good, really good track there, and great playing on it. So yeah, Wicked Things for me would get a 9 out of 10. Now, closing side one, we get a track called Dublin, which is the most kind of stripped back. You can kind of tell this song is very self-produced, very kind of done quickly sort of thing, because it's basically a solo acoustic track by Paddy McAloon, and but again, lyrically, I'm not too sure what it's about. I've read it's about the troubles in Northern Ireland, but again, maybe the chorus doesn't really suggest that he sort of sings Dublin, home of pretty Colleens. I mean, that line was kind of laughed at by some in Ireland, come on, we've got more than that, to a country and that. But no, it's a song which I don't really go back to often. I would say it's more just, it's pleasant on the album, but maybe nothing more than that. But there is again another great line in it. I love it. I love what he sings, does it take you back to the kind of world that hindsight calls the good old days? Now there's no room in an Einstein world for simple cause and effect. I think that's a good line, but again, it's just it's not really it's the message of the song. If it is about the troubles in Ireland, it doesn't really convey like any sort of like meaning about that like too well, I don't think. But anyway, it's still a pleasant song though, like to listen to. It's kind of easy listening, and yeah, I mean, yeah, the most unfinished sounding track like on the album, but that's not really a bad thing, like with it. So yeah, Dublin for me would get a 7 out of 10 overall.
I love to sing my songs for you, but I don't know if I can.
Next track up could be my personal favourite on the album, opening side 2 is called Tiffanys, and this is a kind of rockabilly style track, which I really love. I love the kind of playful sort of piano what goes through the track, and it's just got a kind of all-round laid back, not so serious vibe, like which seems to plague a lot of other Prefab Sprout songs. It kind of seems, especially like later on, like they kind of start to become very serious and sort of like he starts to take himself a bit too seriously, whereas this one is just a good time, this track, and it's one of like their earliest compositions as well, dating from 1977, and it's kind of like lyrically about like a Newcastle nightclub called Tiffanys. And yeah, I love it. I think it's a fantastic song. It's got great playing on it. The piano's great. The drumming's fantastic on it. And I would say that I kind of wish that they had made an album sort of prior to the debut album, which came out in '84. But like, I mean, like if they had songs like this kicking about like in 1977, I would have loved to have heard an album like sort of like from like that era, because they had this song and a track from and like a track from the album before, The Golden Calf, is fantastic. Again, a rocking song. So they did certainly change the sound and develop, but also good that like they did revisit some of those older songs like in tracks like this. So yeah, Tiffanys for me would get a 10 out of 10. Really great song.
That's why the boys and girls love Diana.
Next one up is called Diana, which is another early composition. I believe this one dates from around 1982. And it concerns sort of like Princess Diana, basically. Like McAloon says that like it kind of like is about the way that she was sort of described like in the media like a lot of the time, and sort of like about like the burden this must like have had on her. So he sort of uses kind of like over the top metaphors like sort of like to like describe her. Like he sings like her eyes China blue stars, she's born that way, she chased off apple strudel, you can tell she does, with arms that hold sweet William to her breast. I mean, it's a very sophisticated sounding song, like once again, maybe not quite as immediate or as kind of catchy like some of the other tracks, nor is it sort of like as sort of like relatable, considering like it is sort of like about like sort of like Princess Diana. But nice song though again, and again like a track which was originally released like as a B-side. I think it came out as one of the Steve McQueen B-sides, like, but was later, as I said, going to be on like this album like originally, and again just finds its home here. So yeah, Diana, a nice song there, would get an 8 out of 10.
So casually, she never suspects I'm home.
Next one up is called Talking Scarlet, which is a track which kind of concerns sort of lust and sort of having kind of intense sort of feelings for someone. Like you might be friends, but like you're trying to like sort of get a bit more with them. Like he sings with it like, I'll break the bonds of friendship one by one. I tell her I'm more than some friendly fellow. I'll say, how are you doing, so casually she'll never suspect that I'm harbouring thoughts of kissing her neck. Like that whole bit of the song just goes on a little journey, and again his vocals very passionate. Like he's a great, he can be quite a like emotive singer like when like he wants to be, but I mean again not the most exciting arrangement, but it is an easy listening song this, and yeah, song which just like very pleasant like all round, and again just with that lovely flowing melody. I think this one deserves a 9 out of 10 for Talking Scarlet.
Till the cows come home.
Next track is possibly my least favourite on the album. It's called Till the Cows Come Home, and it's this is probably the closest this album gets to a real protest song sort of thing, like about sort of like social commentary in that. So it basically kind of concerns like as like it concerns impoverished communities like in like the northeast of England, that where like the band are from. So it begins with kind of like an industrial sort of soundscape going on, and then like some sort of lines like things like, aren't you a skinny kid just like his papa? Where is he working? He's not working. Thin as a smile I wear. So yeah, it kind of like goes on about that. So it's not the most upbeat song like by any means, but it's quite dramatic arrangement going on. You've got a bit of like harmonica on it, but for me it reminds me a lot of the track Desire As from Steve McQueen, that you can almost like when I'm listening to this, I'm always expecting them to do the chorus like of that one. It's very similar kind of musical vibes to it. But okay song, again for me maybe my least favourite, something which I listened to on the album, I would never skip it, but it's not a particularly memorable song at that though.
There'll be no stampede.
Next track up is called The Pearly Gates, which is the closing track to the album, and this one's got more sort of like religious sort of like undertones like to the lyrics. It's basically sort of about kind of people sort of almost sort of queuing to get like into heaven. Like he sings like on it like there'll be no stampede on the pearly gates. I'll say after you and you'll say I don't mind the wait. But I do like again the sort of like the atmosphere like of this song. I think it's a very touching like little track, and I like the drumming on it as well, which sort of alternates between a kind of military beat, which sort of gives this sense of, I guess, impending doom, but then these then delicate washes like of cymbals as well, and then McAloon again is very warm vocal like on this track, who is then supported by Wendy Smith later on, which I think like is like a lovely closer. I mean, it perhaps preempts themes like what would be explored on the Jordan the Comeback album, but I think it's like a lovely song and a nice way to close off the album. So that one would get a 9 out of 10. Okay, so overall this album would score 86%, so I think this is a very, very strong album. I mean, it's possibly my favourite of their albums. I mean, I'm still, again, quite new to them, but this for me was the album which got me into them. Like, I saw, like, I had copies of Swoon and Steve McQueen, and I both, and like previously I thought, yeah, they're alright albums, but then like it was only like after listening to this one, perhaps it's just a bit more accessible, a little bit more sort of like the stripped back production, like in like a way like allows the songs to shine, but then like at the same time the songs don't seem like they're being overtly clever, like, or like he's like sort of like trying to be sort of kind of too quirky like for like the sake of it, like, which I think perhaps maybe plagues like the Swoon album, like for like example, a very strong record here, and like as I said, like I've been listening a lot more to their other albums like Jordan, like and Steve McQueen, like as like a result of buying this. I think it was a bit of a shame that it wasn't originally released like as it was intended. Like I mean, I don't know whether it would have been a huge hit like had it sort of like followed so soon after Steve McQueen. I think maybe like in hindsight the record company was perhaps right to sort of like hold off on this, because I do think although this is a very strong album, it's maybe not got quite the sort of the same sparkle like what Steve McQueen has, and like might have been seen like if it had been like released like at the time like as a bit of a letdown, whereas like by holding off like on releasing it, I guess it kind of gathered a element like of mystique and sort of like as kind of like a lost album, as like a lost masterpiece or something. I mean, it's not quite a lost masterpiece, but it's a good album, and again a central part like of Prefab Sprout's discography. So yeah, that is my review of Protest Songs. So I hope you have enjoyed the video, and I will see you all next time for the next one. Goodbye.